Before I break down and unpack the Ten Commandments for us, let me put down this just basic clause that the person who's teaching you is a sinner. Okay, I am just relaying information to you. So when I do talk about certain commandments and everything, I am relaying information. So when you see it or you hear it or you're thinking about it, you're like, well, sometimes my husband says to me when he watches some of my my classes or my films, he goes, you know, you have this tendency to come across as holier than thou, and you're not, because I know you, we went to college together, I know exactly who you are. So I said, I'm just the messenger, so don't shoot me. But the important thing is that I would like to unpack for you the Ten Commandments. And I don't think the Israelites actually got this when Moses came down from Mount Sinai, that our good and gracious God, who is so amazing and so infinitely loving, gave us our laws in order to live a fuller life. Just like you have laws in your house, right? You know, you need to brush your teeth, you need to wash your face, you need to at least shower once a day, you know, you got to eat your vegetables, you got to be in by 9 p.m. or 6 or 7. You know, you have to say please and thank you. These are things that we have boundaries that we have for our children to raise them in a loving and nurturing environment. And before God came and gave us these commandments, we had this innate sense inside of our being what is right and wrong. And so he didn't necessarily need to come and say, thou shalt not murder, because Cain knew immediately that when he killed his brother, that was wrong. We have this innate sense in us that God gave us that what is right and wrong. So the premise of the Ten Commandments is to give us boundaries in living a healthy life. And I know sometimes when we look at it and it says, thou shalt not, or you should not, our God wanted to just make sure that he was very clear about things. Also, he wanted to use as few words as possible, but to convey a broad spectrum, all right? So when I break them apart, you're going to see that it includes a lot in it, and it might just blow your mind sometimes. The other thing I want you to, if there's only one thing that you get today when you walk out of here, when it comes to being a moral Catholic Christian and teaching that to your children, is that our faith is all about being life-giving. That's it. If we are life-giving in our thoughts, our words, our actions, in everyone that we encounter, then he did his job by giving us the commandments and we understood it. But our job is to be life-giving. So in everything that we do, we must be giving life, upholding life, lifting people up in life. Okay, so it's going to seem like a lot, and I better get started. So, the Ten Commandments is a covenant that God gave to us, and I am never going to get this right. All right, so the first 3 commandments, they deal with our relationship with God. Okay, so that was what he wanted to say. The first 3. I'm the Lord thy God. You shouldn't have any strange gods before me. Don't take the name of the Lord in vain, and remember to keep holy Sabbath day. That is about our relationship with God. Okay? And then the last 7 are about our relationship with everybody else. Okay? Honor your father and mother. You should not kill. You shouldn't commit adultery, steal, bear false witness against your neighbor, covet your neighbor's wife, covet your neighbor's goods. Right? Now I just flew through those. All right, but the main objective of this is to honor your parents, honor human life, honor human sexuality, and the property of others. Okay? So honor is a huge word in our faith. Honor is a word that we don't use lightly. I mean, we use that when we talk about covenants, when we talk about a promise between God and us, or a covenant between a husband and a wife, something very serious. That honor word, lifting someone up, lifting up God in our lives, lifting up our spouse, lifting up our children, honoring them and their lives. Okay, so the basics for this one, this is hysterical. I love it when I say Hercules and Xena and all that. When I was, I think, I want to say in the 80s, early 90s, there was Xena Warrior Princess or something like that. Teenagers don't get that, and none of these young people know who Xena is. But when I say Xena, they're like, "Who's that?" But they know who Hercules is because they got Disney Channel or Disney Plus. But you shall have no other gods before me. Just the blatant use of that is giving, power to anything other than God. So no false gods like Hercules, Xena, Satan. Consciously, willingly denying the existence of God, like being an atheist, and willingly being ignorant of what God has revealed in sacred scripture and sacred tradition. Okay? As well as believing in astrology, numerology, and Dianetics. Now, if you are looking at the back of a Cosmo magazine and you're just seeing what the astrologer says for Capricorn this month, and it's an entertainment value, that's not a big deal. But if you put faith in it, then you have now put in faith in something else rather than God. Okay? Understand? I mean, entertainment is fine. Okay? Involvement in New Age spirituality, religions that have no creed, liturgy and doctrine, a church structure and leadership or institutions of that nature. Ancient paganism, the occult, superstitions. Okay, so superstitions. If you have a lucky rabbit's foot, if you worry about walking under a ladder or a black cat crossing your path, putting power, giving power to something else than rather God. Okay? Of course, we do these things like, for fun. If you spill salt and you throw it over your shoulder, people, young people nowadays will look at that and go, "What?" But they do have superstitions. If anybody has a sailor in their family, like mine, the entire history of maritime world is all superstitious. If you could see all of the things that sailors used to do, because they were so worried about going out to sea, and it was so dangerous and perilous that they would think, certain things would cause them problems. Like if you encountered a redhead on the way to your ship, then you're not allowed to get on board because something bad's going to happen to you. Women were not allowed to be on board the ships, but they would have a female bowsprit, because that protected them. As soon as you put a mast on a ship, you had to have a full silver dollar under the mast before it was christened. They have hundreds of superstitions, and I don't understand how these guys even discovered anything, but they did. And I mean, it goes on. And the only reason I know all of this is because I got a minor in maritime history, and my last paper was on superstitions of the maritime sailors. And being a female working on a ship, that was a lot, too. And most of the time, oh, by the way, I'm a retired merchant marine. So I sailed on a ship with 26 men for 6 years, and I was usually the only female on board. Even the cooks were men. So being a female on board a ship, and some of them, even in the 20th century, still superstitious, okay? But if you put power into anything else, like witchcraft, sorcery, devil worship, white and black magic, voodoo, spiritualism, communicating with the dead, fortune telling, I mean, those psychic networks, when you call and give them money, I don't know if anybody knows about that anymore, but those things are giving power to something else other than God. Psychics, tarot cards, Ouija boards, Lucky Charms, they're all a violation of thou shalt, keeping God as the only God in your life. Sacred and desecration of holy objects is also part of breaking this. So I think it was in the 1990s that the old Our Lady of Guadalupe Parish Church got broken into right before Christmas, and someone had just desecrated the entire church, got the tabernacle and then dumped it, and the Eucharist was spread all over. And Father Dan Hebert, who was the pastor at the time, talks about just how, everyone in the parish, including himself, were so sick because of what they have done to God and to their place of worship, God's house. So, that's like an extreme. And these are more like, playing around with things. And the reason why we unpack it this way is so that if your child comes to you and says, Mom, what's voodoo? Mom, what's this? Mom, Dad, can you explain to me what a Ouija board is? Or I saw this movie the other day and they had this and they were in a graveyard. What are they doing? This way you can explain that to them and say that this in particular goes against the first commandment, which of course we treasure, okay? So the first commandment is the commandment above all, that if you break any of the other commandments, you initially really break the first one as well, okay? So if you take the Lord's name in vain, you're also putting something else before God, like your own feelings, your own thoughts, all of that, okay? Today, the most common way the first commandment is broken is just when you put something else before God, okay, when it's not your highest priority. And in today's world, we don't know if we're coming or going. The bishop said that we have a dispensation to not attend Mass, and then now we have to come back to Mass, right? But there are people that are still afraid, and they're not coming to Mass. So when you watch the live stream or you take that as your Sunday obligation, that's still putting God first, okay? So you need to understand that, all right? And explain to your kids, too, the same thing. If you put your career, your fame, your fortune, your comfort, your pleasure, your family, or a friend as the most important object or value in your life, and it's your priority, then you are not putting God first. Showing any disrespect by not making God the highest priority. So if you're too busy to go to church every week. For the last, I want to say 16 years. For the last 16 years, 2 of my 3 children have been playing competitive hockey. And that in itself is like a full-time job. So my husband told me when I first started as a youth minister almost 20 years ago, you need to find a balance because it's like all God all the time. And he said, all right, I want you to take our kids and sign them up for hockey. And I thought he was nuts because I grew up swimming and playing tennis and volleyball and softball, and they were like not ice type activities. But living in Alaska, and he wanted our kids to be raised that way. So Annabelle was 4, Nick was 5, and I signed them up for hockey. And the next thing you know, it's all church, all hockey, and then maybe 5 or 6 hours of sleep in between, So I found that balance. I just my house was never clean, and, food was never on the table at the right time, but we definitely did that. And then as the kids got older and older, and I found more of a balance there, and got more involved in both activities, whether it was church involved or being on the board at AHA, or being their manager for their hockey team or something like that, I found a complete balance in that. And the next thing you know, I'm the vice president of the North Stars, and I'm running all the tournaments for the competitive groups. But I never missed Mass on Sunday, and I was always there praying with the players or telling them, God bless you, have fun. But there's not one person in the state of Alaska that is in hockey that doesn't know that I'm Catholic. And there's a lot of Catholic parents at the rink. And one mom came up to me one day and she goes, I don't know how you do this and still go to church on Sunday. And I'm like, well, I don't go to Sunday Mass at Holy Cross. I'll go to St. Elizabeth's, or I'll go to St. Benedict's, or if I'm skiing in Girdwood, then I'll go to Our Lady of the Snows. Or if I'm in Texas or New Mexico or Hawaii, I'll still go. I don't have to go to my parish. But the great thing about our faith is that the Catholic Mass is everywhere. And to put God first and to even just spend some time praying, that's easy. Now, there are times where my husband has taken us out into the middle of Alaska where we aren't near any civilization whatsoever. And so, bringing like a missalette, praying the rosary with your kids, definitely letting them know that Sunday is a day that should be holy. And spending some time breaking open the Word or just praying with them and letting them know that. I mean, you can go camping and out in your four-wheelers or to your cabin and Healy and still not worry about any of that stuff. I used to be very scrupulous about my life, and when I would get home after being out at sea for 6 months, I wouldn't receive the Eucharist because I felt like even though I was listening to Mass on the single sideband radio, I wasn't receiving the Eucharist, and I was getting spiritual communion, but because I didn't go to Mass and I missed Mass for 6 months, I would never receive the Eucharist when I first got back until I went to confession. Because I thought, that there was something wrong with that. And then come to find out, the priest said, well, if you're out in the middle of the ocean and there's no Catholic priest around and you can't receive the Eucharist and go to Mass, why do you think that you've done something wrong? So I don't do that necessarily anymore, So don't scrupulize yourself too much, but make sure that you let your kids understand that it doesn't matter if you're playing hockey or soccer or you're working or not. Sunday is a day that's supposed to be holy. Sunday is a day for family. Sunday is that day that God wants you to put Him first, okay? So, love the Lord your God with all your soul, all your mind, all your strength. Upholding this commandment means that we honor Him. And you know what? An hour a week is very little that He's asking of us. And I still say to my husband, if I only saw you for an hour a week, we would have a horrible relationship. Because we wouldn't be able to communicate everything that we need to communicate. Even when he's out in Dutch Harbor and I'm home, he does call me 3 or 4 times a day. And every time he calls me, I end up talking to God because I'm like, okay, I know you want to talk to me more than my husband does, even though he does. He calls me all the time. Even when I'm here and he's just up the hill, he calls all the time. So as great as you have a relationship with your spouse or your children, God wants a better relationship with you. And so when you talk to your kids about this commandment, just say, He loves you so much. He loves you more than I could possibly love you, and He wants to have a relationship with you. And so that's why He put this first, okay? This has to be the most important thing, all right? So when we examine our conscience for this, do we truly love God above everything? Do we claim to have good values but bend them occasionally? Do we turn to God in thankful prayer mostly when we want something? Do we really want to be transformed by the will of God, or do we just use the religion in order to look good? Kate Bazine gave me this beautiful little book. It's the little book about confession for children. And when you're examining your conscience for children, it's very simple. Just put God in your life and make it number one, okay? The other thing I'm going to give you today is an examination of conscience that if you've gone into the confessional, you've seen it. But when you examine your conscience morally with using the 10 Commandments, there's a different examination of conscience for children than there is for teenagers, than there is for adults, okay? And we all can understand that. Kids may not understand that. I remember when I was 7 and my dad and I went to the church on a Friday to do the Stations of the Cross, and the priest was in the confessional and my dad went in there, and it seemed like forever. I'm like, why is my daddy in there so long? What is he talking about? And how could he be so bad? I kept thinking that because I looked at my father as just this holy, holy man, and he is, but as adults, we know what it's like when we go into the confessional. We were talking to the priest about what's going on in our lives. Sometimes we forget the time, or that we have a 7-year-old sitting in the pew. But we have a lot going on, and we have to spend that time getting right with God. And that beautiful sacrament that Jesus gave us, this healing sacrament of reconciliation, that's one of the 2 great sacraments that God gave us so that He can be physically present for us. I mean, the Eucharist, besides the fact that when we come to Mass and receive the Holy Eucharist and we get to hold the Creator of the universe in our hands, if you could get your head wrapped around that, the Creator of the universe, you get to hold in your humble, fragile, broken hands, and then consume him, and he becomes part of you. That's amazing. But then you also get the opportunity to sit down with him and talk to him about what's going on in your life, which when I talk to Jesus in the person of the priest, I get way better, information and recommendations than I would from my girlfriends. Trust me. Okay? Or my husband. It's more sound. It's more, that relationship part you get to spend talking to Christ. And so when we break apart the 10 Commandments as part of our, examination of conscience, little kids, it's really easy. Just put God first in your life. That's simple. And then when we look at it, we need to unpack it and go, okay, what have I been doing in my life? Because for them, they're looking at us. And everything that we do, they want to do until they turn 12. And then something happens and then they want to be their own person. But when they're younger, it's a whole monkey see, monkey do thing. What are mom and dad doing? I want to be exactly like them. And then as you get older and they get older and everything like that, they're going to see that. And so if you're going to confession, they want to go to confession. If you're going to Mass, they want to go to Mass. If you're coming in here and you enjoy the information that's given you and you like to share that with them, that's great. But we all want our kids to have a relationship with God. And so we have to remember this first commandment, all right? All right, let's move on. Taking the name of the Lord in vain. Okay, it's not just stubbing your toe and saying his name. It's not just that. It's being just disrespectful to the name of God, all right? And all types of swearing. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter if you're texting OMG. It doesn't matter any of that stuff. All of that is every single little one of them. And I'm guilty of all of that as well. I mean, all I had to do was say I was a sailor, and that potty mouth was here. All right? I should have had soap in my mouth lots of times. When I was a little kid, definitely. But if you disrespect a manner in blasphemy, that's God. All right? Even a church. Okay? So if you disrespect a place of worship and saying something derogatory about it, whether it's a temple, a mosque, a Baptist church, it doesn't matter, okay? So wherever anything is considered sacred, it doesn't matter if you consider it sacred or not, other people do, okay? So when we say that or we talk about that, we just have to make sure that what comes out of our mouth is life-giving. And then like the desecration and vandalism that happened at Our Lady of Guadalupe, that just sometimes, when people don't realize that could actually, that's atrocious. And even the mosques that were destroyed in Afghanistan, or even, in the Holy Land, any of those things, that vandalism. And then as we get older, or even we're just hanging out with our friends or whatever, making jokes, watching movies, reading books that are disrespectful to God, or anything considered holy is a sin. And it also forbids false oaths, perjury, or swearing. What else was I going to say? Nope, we're still good. All right. So when you examine your conscience for the second commandment, do you show respect for God, or do you misuse his name? Do you hesitate when you mention God's name in appropriate situations? Yeah, that also brings up the point, like when my husband and I first got married, and we would say we were at the Olive Garden, and I did the sign of the cross, and we were about to eat, and he kind of like looked at me because he wasn't Catholic at the time, and then he's like, "Okay, so you're going to have to show me what you're doing because I have no idea what you're doing," and so we started saying grace. And he was very uncomfortable doing that in public. And now, praise Jesus, he's Catholic. But now he's the first one to do the sign of the cross and say grace at any place that we are at, even in our own home. And that, I think, right there, just putting the name of God out there, never hesitating to do that. It doesn't matter if it's an appropriate situation or not, I always put God in there. If it's a situation where you are being pushed in a corner, I always bring God into it. If you do not know what to say in a situation and you feel like you're trapped, the only thing to say is, I'll pray for you. And then immediately start praying. Because there's not one person on this earth that I know of that doesn't want prayer, ever. And even if you are arguing with somebody or you're pushed in a corner by any way, no one's going to stop you from praying. Okay? And they shouldn't. At least not in this country. All right? But don't hesitate to bring God into it. All right? I used to have a t-shirt that said, "Hockey has enhanced my prayer life." And then all of the parents were like, "Okay, wait, I want that shirt. Where did you get that shirt?" And I made it because I'm on the glass like this sometimes, praying over the team as they're playing, because it's dangerous. And when the older your kids get, the more hitting happens. And my son's helmet once got cracked because he got slammed so hard, but the helmet took the brunt of it, thank goodness. And I can say now, after years of my kids playing, not one of them ever got a concussion. And I think it's because I was praying for them while they were playing. Do we strive to learn about God by paying attention at church, religion class, or through other educational opportunities? These are how we live out these commandments. As opposed to saying, "Thou shalt not," you should say, "I think I will pay attention better at Mass. I think I will pray more. I think I'll try and listen to, this podcast, or I'll read this book," okay? All right, and then the third commandment about keeping our relationship with God better, keeping it holy. So remember to keep holy the Sabbath day. So we changed, the Jewish celebration of Sabbath begins at sundown on Friday and lasts until sundown on Saturday, okay? So when we talk about a vigil Mass, like Saturday, our vigil Mass is at 5:30 p.m., and then our final Mass is at 5:30 on Sunday. That 24-hour period of time, is sacred, okay? So Catholicism and Christianity moved it to Sunday after Jesus rose from the dead on Easter Sunday. So Jewish people from Friday to Saturday, Christians from Saturday night to Sunday, okay? To honor the risen Lord on the day of the week that he rose from the dead, making Sunday our day of worship instead of Saturday, which the Hebrews honored. So, on the day of the Lord, we should put God and family first. And in a perfect world, no one would have to work on Sunday. Yeah, that's not going to happen. It used to be in a world, I think when my parents are in their 80s, but when they were younger, everything was closed on Sunday. The grocery store was closed on Sunday. All the schools were closed on Sunday. You didn't have anything open on Sunday. The only thing open on Sunday were churches. And everybody went to church. And then everybody went to one family member's house, and they all spent the entire day there. They ate an afternoon supper, and all the kids were outside playing and tearing the place apart. And all the parents were inside spending time with each other. Okay? It's kind of like Christmas every Sunday. That's usually the only time my family has the time to get together, because we're all over the country. But it is nice to be there and have all of the adults together, and then all the kids are outside running around. My dad once told me, he said, it would be so nice if all of my kids owned a house on the same cul-de-sac. And I laughed hysterically because I love my brothers and my sister, but I don't think I could be neighbors with them because them seeing everything and all that, When we were younger also, we were really, really close, whereas now I have different interests than they do, So, but I love them dearly. All right, so in this, keeping this day holy, a valid Catholic Mass is important, that we hold our Masses real, true, substantial, because the presence of the Eucharist is here. For all the confirmation parents, when your young person gets confirmed and they decide as a junior or senior in high school that they want to go to church with their friends, and they decide they want to go to like City Church or any of the churches on Church Row up here, or even Change Point, definitely let them go. Absolutely let them go. But please, absolutely let them understand that they must fulfill their Sunday obligation as well. So if they want to go to any of these other churches, that's absolutely fine. But they need to fulfill their Sunday obligation, receive the Eucharist, and say thank you to God for everything that they have. The roof over their head, their parents, the food that they eat, the school they go to, the shoes on their feet, all that stuff, okay? My son, Alex, when he was a junior in high school, he had gotten confirmed, and his best friend down the street was going to Life Church up the street. When you drive up Huffman, you go by the Life Church, they have like 9 buses. They have the biggest bus ministry in the state. They call every young person on Saturday night, and they go, hey, Alex, are you going to go to church on Sunday? And he goes, yes. All right, we'll be outside your house at 9 o'clock in the morning. We'll pick you up. Okay, great. Okay, so Alex, you got to go to Saturday night mass or Sunday night mass if you're going to go to Life Church. Okay, Mom, no problem. All right. So he gets picked up at 9. He gets home at 2. 2 in the afternoon. And he was there forever, right? And I said, well, what do you guys do when you're there? He goes, well, you know, they have really good music, and they have like a preacher that talks for like an hour, and then we play games, and then they do Bible stories and all this stuff, and then we get back on the bus and we come back. And I said, no, you used to complain about being at church for an hour. If it was over an hour, like an hour and 3 minutes, you're like, oh, you know, huffing and puffing. And he goes, yeah, but this is way better. And I said, well, how so? He goes, well, I feel closer to God when I'm there. And I'm like, do they have the Eucharist? And he goes, well, no. And I said, so do you believe that this is the real body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus Christ in the Eucharist? And he said, yes. And I said, okay, then, just make sure that you fulfill your Sunday obligation. Young people are going to look around, okay? That's just in our nature, you know, to check things out. And they will want to go to church with their friends. That's okay. They should also invite their friends to church with them. The youth group, I tell them, you don't have to be Catholic to come to youth group. Not at all. Come. I mean, we'll pray and we'll do stuff every month that has to do with prayer. But they should be together. They should have fellowship together, right? And so they need to also understand how important it is to keep Sunday holy. And that as they get older and they maybe start getting their driver's license, get a job, go off to college, they need to keep Sunday holy. My mom calls me every Sunday, 2 o'clock on the dot, all right? Even when I was in college, and asks me, so what did you think of the gospel reading this Sunday? I remember my freshman year in college, I'm like, that kind of hurt. I thought, well, I was finally alone. I didn't have to check in with my parents, da-da-da-da. So then I found a Catholic church near my school. And then I committed a sin by stealing the missalette and taking it to my dorm room. But at least I had a copy of all the readings, because back then they didn't have websites where you could go to the usccb.org and see what the readings were for Sunday, you know. We didn't have the internet back then. That's how old I am, just so you know. All right, so I couldn't cheat that way. So instead, I stole, and I took the missalette home with me to my dorm room, and I knew when my mom was calling, it's like, all right, it's 1:30, I better read the gospel reading, you know. And I had to learn really fast what was happening. But that was such a great way for my mom to make sure that I kept that day holy. She knew I wasn't going to church. She totally knew I wasn't going to church, because when I got home at Christmas, you know, I would sit in the pew and I wouldn't get up to receive the Eucharist. But what I loved about her was that she never mentioned it. Never. Not once. And she knew that was between me and God. But she also knew she raised me right, in that it would all come around. And now what am I doing? I'm standing here in a church talking about going to church, you know. So definitely let your kids, you know, look around, but let them know that this is more important. and that God really, really wants to have that relationship with us. So, as I said, in a perfect world, Catholics would have Sundays off. Now, there have been many churches that I've been to, or even lots of people I've encountered who work 14-hour shifts on a Saturday and a Sunday, and their only day off would be like a Monday or a Tuesday. You can get a dispensation from your pastor to make a Monday or a Tuesday your holy day. You can. And a lot of people don't understand that they can do that. And they just like let it go. Well, I can't go to Mass. I can't do it. I mean, just talk to your pastor. They have the authority to do that. So if you are ever stuck in that situation, or even your children for that matter, let them know that you can get a dispensation to do that. All right? Okay. Let's see. All right, so do you come to church to celebrate the Eucharist? Do you attend Mass only when it's convenient? Do you participate in the Eucharist by praying and singing? Okay, now you got to be singing. Okay, I know some of us don't like to sing, and I know some of us don't like to hear other people singing. Yeah, I know. God gave us the voice that he gave us, and he wants to hear it. Okay, even if it's horrible, make a joyful noise to the Lord. Okay, my kids are so funny because I love to sing. I've been singing. I was a cantor for 15 years, and if you're not singing, that's part of praying. You sing when you singing, you're praying twice. Okay, pay attention to the Word of God. Open yourselves up to what God's calling you to do. All right. That spectator part, that comes from Bishop Hurley. He hated music. He always was like, we don't really need music. Well, liturgically speaking, the Alleluia needs to be sung. So it should be sung. But also, when we come into a church, do we acknowledge the true presence of Christ in the Eucharist and receive him reverently in Holy Communion? Okay? So, let's continue. All right. Did I pass it? All right, go. All right. This is one of my favorite ones. And it's not because it just says honor thy father and mother, but honor your father and mother. So now we started with I got 17 minutes to cover the last 7. Okay, we're going to do this real fast. But honor thy father and mother. That means honoring authority, not just mom and dad, but your teachers, police officers, your boss, your pastor, all those people. Also not being ashamed or embarrassed or harboring feelings of hatred towards your parents. So if you kiss your child on their way to school and they're 15 years old and you say, I love you, and they're embarrassed by you, boom, that's wrong. That is wrong. So Camille, make sure that you let them know. Protecting the dignity and integrity of the family. This is why I love this commandment. God didn't say honor thy father and father. God didn't say honor thy mother and mother. God said honor thy father and mother because of the sanctity of marriage within the context between a man and a woman and the unity with their children. That's why he said it. And then if you look at biblical history, what was happening was they were coming from Egypt for those 40 years that they're wandering the desert. They would leave their elderly parents behind. And, when they finally were at the foot of Mount Sinai and they didn't have their parents behind, God was like, you need to honor your mother and your father. You need to take care of them, okay? Don't abandon them, all right? Respect them. This also entails or implies respect for, as I said, anybody of authority, and also patriotism. And knowing, especially lately in our lives, that political leaders, laws, and policies, if they're unjust and immoral, then those are wrong. But being patriotic, loving your country, loving authority. Okay, so examining your conscience for this, recognizing the natural law of the family, all right? Putting the family first. God has his 3 that deal with him, and the first one he brought up after that was parents and family. That's how important it is, okay? So, family and the basis of faith and the church. And if we examine our conscience for this, do we help bring peace and happiness to our families? Are we generous with our parents and our children? Do we listen? Do we love, obey, and respect our parents? And then for kids, Do you help around the house with the chores? Definitely bring that in there. Okay, moving on. The next thing, respecting life. Okay, you shall not murder. When people say thou shalt not kill, there is a difference between the translation in the Bible for kill and murder, okay? The difference is killing and murder are different. Murder is premeditated, all right? All right, so murder versus killing. The subtle distinction is if you're killing an unjust aggressor, preserving your own life, yes, it's still killing, but it's not considered murder. So if you're protecting yourself, if someone comes into my home and my children are there, and I do take a life, that is not in that context of murder. Don't think for 1 minute that I'm not going to be traumatized by what happens and that I'm going to think horrible, that God, please forgive me for taking a life. But when you are protecting your life and the lives of the people in your own household, then that is not unjust killing. Okay, so, and also when it comes to police officers and soldiers who may have to use deadly force, you need to explain this to your kids, okay? Because sometimes they don't get it. When they see, especially like on the TV, if they see soldiers that are in another country or whatever, and they're trying to protect the innocent, that's the job. That's the job. That's what first responders and police officers and soldiers are doing. They're trying to protect the innocent. And the last resort would be using deadly force. Are there other people out there that do that? Yeah, sure, but that's not what the point is. Murder and killing, two totally different things. All right. So the church believes that the intentional taking of an innocent life, murder, homicide, manslaughter, abortion, euthanasia, suicide, capital punishment, dueling terrorism, violence, unjust war, and physical abuse. So, yes, suicide is on there, and I just want to make sure that you also understand that the Catholic Church has changed its stance on a Catholic funeral as far as it comes to suicide. They have looked at that as saying if someone commits suicide, that they have a mental illness and are not capable of protecting their own life. Okay? A mental illness that, like if someone is cutting themselves, if someone is doing physical harm to themselves, they are not right in the head. Okay? If Camille was going to shoot me or throw something at me or an arrow or whatever, the first thing I would do is protect myself, right? If for some reason you don't have the capability of protecting yourself or you do not care, then that is a mental condition and you are still allowed to have a Catholic funeral. I just want you to understand that, okay? That's really important that you understand that. Because in this day and age where mental health of young people is really catastrophically just messed up, that you need to understand that if you hear of a young person that has done that, you need to understand also that we can pray for them. They can have a Catholic funeral, but also that we should be more loving with our words and also no abuse. But other violations of this commandment, criminal negligence, refusing to save someone's life if you're able to do so. Anger, hatred, and revenge in your heart for your neighbor, abusing drugs and alcohol, recklessly endangering others, mutilation and torture of humans and animals, psychological or emotional abuse, because that lingers for a long, long time. Much more than most physical abuse. So, and like I said earlier, God didn't need to come and give the Ten Commandments. Cain knew it was wrong to murder, okay? And so did the Nazis. And so all natural moral law, we need to understand that murdering, that's an atrocity, okay? We need to respect life. So examine our conscience. Have you injured anyone? Do you strive to forgive others that have hurt you? Do you share what you have with those? Do we support the life and mission of the church? Okay, so let's move on. All right. You shall not commit adultery, and you shall not covet your neighbor's wife. So we got a twofer. Good, I'm catching up. All right, so not only do we respect life and love life, but we also have to respect human sexuality, all right? This comes from honoring thy father and mother, okay? That context in marriage between a loving relationship. We need to honor that. Not just respect it, but honor it, okay? The Sixth Commandment forbids acts of physical, immoral sexual activity, specifically adultery. So this is where I was telling one of my coworkers, as Catholics, we have a tendency to put God in a box and to make God small. And when we say, God, all God said was, thou shalt not commit adultery. God didn't say, pornography was bad. God didn't say fornication was bad. God said, thou shalt not commit adultery. Okay, well, that in the whole spectrum of it includes all of that up to fornication and every single thing in that paragraph right there, which I really don't like bringing up, especially in a sanctuary. In a classroom, no problem. I'll bring it up. I've seen more young people embarrassed by me saying those words and just going, oh my gosh, I can't believe Miss Teresa just said that. Well, it has to be said sometimes. But this is a sacred place, and I don't think it needs to be said. You can read that. All right. Anyway, also outside of the context of marriage, anything like that is sinful. But human life is a gift, and it should be respected. And God gave us that loving act between a husband and a wife, and it should remain sacred. All right? It's a divine gift. And it's also designed to promote love, unity, and life. All right? So when he says don't do these things, he means be loving, be life-giving, have unity with your spouse, and let other people see that. Okay? That's our rubric for living a holy life. And this is where it gets a little controversial. Okay? Because in this day and age, we have other ways of conceiving. All right? And other ways of not conceiving. And so when your young person is talking to you about this stuff, anyone who has a first communicant, don't worry about it for a while, but you might have older kids, who knows. But the church says that any contraceptive sex divides the bond between love and life, unity and procreation. All right? And anything that results in, that breaks into that intercourse or that bond of marriage, that loving embrace, like surrogate mothers, sperm banks, in vitro fertilization, human cloning, they're playing God. And so that breaks that bond and unity of life. It's altering that sacred covenant. And so when we jump in there and we think we're more powerful or we can do these things, then when we're playing God, in essence, that's when it becomes sinful. And that's when it breaks our bond with God, and we need to look at our examination of conscience. So do you respect your human body, the holiness of Christian marriages? Do you understand and appreciate the gift of your sexuality? Have you been faithful in your marriage, or even if you're a priest or a religious, or if you're single? Okay? Do you dishonor your bodies, or have you caused others to sin by failure to maintain that? Okay? All right, you shall not steal or covet your neighbor's goods. Another twofer. Good, I got 7 minutes. We're doing great. Wait, that one, keep going. All right, one more. There we go. The 7th and 10th commandment focus on respecting and honoring the possessions of other people. Forbids taking someone else's property or forbids the wanting to do so. The word covet. If I see somebody has a brand new sports car and I'm like a little bit jealous, like, oh, that's awesome. I really wish I could have something like that. That's not coveting, okay? Coveting means obsessing. It's gone beyond, and where it's taking over your brain matter and your day, okay? So covet means going past the reasonable person, okay? So when you covet other people's things or another person's spouse or property or that, then you've gone to the obsession part of it, okay? Explicitly, these two commandments condemn the theft and feeling of envy, greed, jealousy, and reacting to what other people have. And they denounce cheating people out of money, property, depriving workers of a just wage, not giving employers a full day's wage. This also means that if you're a teenager and you're working at the store and you're on your cell phone texting your friends, that you have now just not given your employer your full time. So you have taken that out. So that has to be said. And usually when I have teenagers in a classroom, I make sure they understand that. Also for like someone like me, if I'm at church and I'm on Facebook and I'm just like playing around in my office and I'm not doing work, or I'm on Instagram, or I just take a really long lunch and I make sure that my employer doesn't get a full day out of me, that's the same thing. It could go for me as well as anyone else for that matter. All right? Okay, so the church maintains that personal property is a fundamental right, but it's not considered an absolute right. So if a person owns more food or more property or any of that stuff, we're obliged to give back. Okay, so if you're living, a big, huge house and you have all this stuff and everything, we're obliged to give back. All right, if you're so blessed, then you should be giving. In the same way, government and corporations have no right to deny an individual their inalienable rights of private property. And it does not have a higher value than human life or national security either, for that matter. All right, so if you examine your conscience for this, do you respect property of other people? Have you stolen or damaged or vandalized the property of others? This includes when you're going to school. Like if you damage the desk that you're at, or your locker that you're in, or even, what is on the teacher's desk of that nature. Same thing. Have you cheated at work or school? Have you encouraged others to do the same? Are you honest, hardworking? Are you faithful to your promises? And can you be trusted? So these are all the things we want our children to be. So when you break open this and you unpack this examination of conscience for them, then make sure they understand all of these things. All right? So for the 10th commandment, don't be jealous of other people. Don't brag about buying things. I'm guilty of that. I did that yesterday. Do we appreciate our own good qualities? Do we cope with the problems in front of us? Do we truly seek first the kingdom of God? But also, do we reflect the peace, hope, and joy of people in the body of Christ? All right? Now, the last thing we're going to go through is the 8th commandment. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. So words like bear false witness. Little kids can't get their head wrapped around bear false. It just means lying. Okay, just tell them, don't lie. It's one of the top 10. God said that. And they'll go, no, he said bear false witness. False witness means telling a lie. Okay, so God's regard for the truth is huge. Okay, Jesus said, I am the way and the truth. That is massive. That also made the top 10 list, all right? So basically, this commandment condemns lying, intentionally deceiving others, speaking falsehoods, but consciously intention of withholding facts. I want to let you all understand also, if you can get your head wrapped around this, God knew we would be having this conversation today. God knew that we would be talking about the 10 Commandments today. He also knew that when he gave the 10 Commandments to Moses, that they would last the test of time. That even if they were on stone tablets that would probably disintegrate, the commandments, the word of God, is not going to die. And it's not going to go anywhere either. I mean, it doesn't matter if he said, you should keep this day holy hundreds of thousands of years ago, because today he knew we'd be talking about it. And it's still a day that we should keep holy. When he talks about the truth, he wants us to keep that holy. So, the same thing, don't speak falsehood, do not distort the truth. And also, the omission of facts. Now, granted, when we are talking to our kids about jolly old men in red suits, that doesn't mean we're deceiving somebody, right? We're just keeping the joy alive of, certain traditions, all right? Or when you talk about little fairies with wings that like teeth, that doesn't mean you're deceiving your child, right? But mental reservation is considered a means by which you can withhold the truth without telling a lie. If somebody's holding a gun to your head and your children are hiding in the closet and they say, is anybody else here? And you say no, God is not holding that against you. You are protecting your family, all right? Protecting the safety of others. Also confidentiality, like petitions or a confessor, like the priest. The sacredness of the confessional. Doctor-patient confidentiality, attorney-client privilege. This is where truth and protection of that needs to be really honored, all right? So, lies can come in all sorts of forms. Calumny is telling a lie on purpose to ruin somebody's reputation. Detraction, usually something embarrassing or confidential in the purpose of ruining somebody's reputation. Slander, which tells lies about someone. Libel, publishing lies about somebody. There's all different forms of lying, you know. I thought when I was little, my mom really could tell when I was lying. I thought it was just the most amazing thing because I thought I was a really, really good liar. Not a really good liar, but she told me, she said, it's really interesting when you lie because your voice goes up. And I'm like, I don't understand what you're talking about. She goes, no, really. Every time you would tell a lie, it would just go up, and I didn't even know. So have we told lies to stay out of trouble or avoid a difficult situation? When you're talking to your little ones about that, ask them. You know, when you go to the confessional, you're getting ready because this Tuesday is their first reconciliation, and so you're going to have a lot to unpack with them. Can you be trusted with a secret? Okay? This does not mean safe environment, by the way. If somebody is harming your child and they say you need to keep this secret, they should know the difference between that, by the way. Do you stand up for those unjustly accused or, you know, merely channel rumors, move them on, okay? So, something to ponder. The Ten Commandments are the pillars of our faith, but it's also like a blueprint of how to live our faith, okay? If these commandments were enough, Jesus would not have needed to come. But they weren't. They're not enough. It's just a blueprint for us to live our lives. We still need him. We still need the Eucharist. We still need Christ. We've needed him to come and save us. But we also have the opportunity of having these commandments. There are a lot of people out there that have no idea that they were even brought to fruition, right? But God tells us, and Paul especially in the book of Romans, that it doesn't matter if you're a Jew or a Gentile, that innately inside of us, every single one of us know the difference between right and wrong. We have that in us. And so we don't need to be told as a Catholic or a Christian or a Muslim or somebody who just was raised on a deserted island. We know the difference between right and wrong. We totally do. It's built into us. So we see these rules as a way of behaving, all right? Just like you have rules in your own household, these boundaries that we have for living our lives. So Jesus sums up the commandments in two great commandments, along with what Jesus says in Matthew, which is the instruction along with the great commandment. Does not do away with the Ten Commandments. It's rather an invitation to discover the person Jesus is. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, body, strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. So, any questions? All right, definitely take a copy of the examination of conscience for you, your teenagers, and your children. Here, there's one more. Here's some on this side, and here. And share it with everybody, okay? I went 3 minutes over. Yay! Woo! See, the end.